All right, so everyone should have their calculator, either a physical one or one on their computer. So we'll go over some calculator tricks to quickly find answers for tests such as like SAT, ACT. Here's our objectives. I can quickly solve problems using the TI Nspire, applied technology skills, and demonstrate these skills to others. Take a moment to read the other stuff on the slide, the quote, thoughts, daily reflection.
I love the daily reflection question, Monica. I really need to reflect on that.
And on the next slide, if you want to, you can type in a response. The question is, am I letting matters that are out of my control stress me out? You put yes or no. And then what's something that you could create that could benefit others? All right, let's go ahead and move on. Okay, so here's some contents for today's slides. We have general things such as closing all the windows and resetting the calculator. There's calculator shortcuts, calculator tricks, graphing tricks, Vernier Data Quest, spreadsheet, and geometry. So on the next slide here, there's going to be a PDF of calculator shortcuts. Here's some really important ones. Control W will close all windows. If you look at the calculator here, we have a bunch of tabs open. To close those, you press Control W and then just say if you want to save it or not, usually no, so you just press no. And then when you click on this, you'll just have a new tab by itself again. If you want to reset the whole entire calculator, you'll press Document and the EE, Enter, and the Reset button. All at the same time, you'll click those buttons, the EE, Document, Enter, and also this Reset button at the back. They'll hard reset it though, and only do this as a last resort before putting a help ticket if you need to. Once you do this, you'll have to reinstall the system using the computer software. Now, if you just click the reset button on the back, you won't have to reinstall anything. It'll just reset the calculator. So again, this next slide has different shortcuts that you can use. So a lot of them are the same as like with the computer, like Control Z is to undo, Control Y is to redo, and so on. Here's some things you could type for shortcuts for the symbols. And then just use this for reference on anything that you may need. On this next slide here, on slide 8, this was a formula chart that I gave my Algebra 1 students last year whenever they were doing like a test or something. So it had their star formula chart on one side, and then the other side had calculator tricks, like a quick reference guide to these. There's NSolve, LenSolve, cPolyroots, graphing, deleting tabs, and then how to do regressions in the calculator. So this is just a quick sheet to go through some of the basics on here. And we'll go over each of these in more detail in the later slides. Okay, so let's go over some calculator tools. That's this icon on the calculator. So for solving, we could do NSolve, LenSolve, and cPolyroots. Now with NSolve, we want to press Menu, 3 Algebra, 1 Numerical Solve. Now to do this one, we'll just type in an equation. and then comma x. This will give you the solution for x. Now, if you don't put comma x, it will say error. So make sure to emphasize to everyone to put in comma x first, or before pressing enter, so you get that solution. This will also work for higher degrees. It's just it'll only give one of the roots with the software installed right now on these calculators. So besides nsolve, there's also linsolve. So to do that, you press menu, 3 algebra, 2 solve system of linear equations. You put how many equations you want. Usually there's 2 or 3. Let's just put 3 for this case. And they'll automatically define the variables x, y, z. Now, you could type in your equations. They do not have to be in standard form. They could be in any form you want. So let's just write some random equations out of order. Not simplified, and then maybe one that's in standard form. And then after you've typed your 3 equations or 2 equations, just double check that they're exactly what is on your problem, and then press enter. And then it will give you the solutions. If you want to change these fractions into decimals, you could press Control Enter. And that will make them into decimals.
Nice.
Questions on these 2 methods so far?
When X has two answer choices, will it give you 2 answer choices for X? Like
For the nsolve?
Yeah, when it's a quadratic formula and X may have more than one solution, will it give you both solutions?
Now, last time I checked, it's no, but the next thing will. See, it only gives one. I believe it's the larger X value that it gives. Now, if you want to find the solutions to a quadratic, for example, you'll want to use C polyroots. To do that, you press Menu, 3 Algebra, 3 Polynomial Tools, 3 Complex Roots of Polynomial. So for these, they do have to be in standard form, and it's also only an expression. So let's just use this previous example. So x squared minus 8, and then you put comma x. If you press enter, it will give you both solutions of the set. Now, if you try to put it in like how it is above here, it will say error. It has to be an expression only.
Okay.
If you try to put factors, it will also say error. It has to be in standard form.
Standard.
So it can't be in vertex form. It can't be in factored form, and you can't have an equal sign. You always want to have it 0 on one side. Just don't include that in the notation here.
Okay.
And also make sure that they put comma x. If they don't do that, it'll say that the variable's undefined and stuff.
Ms. Ramirez, is it a way that they can, it will give them the complex number, like as an imaginary number? Give them the solution as an imaginary number?
Yes. So let's see an example for that.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you.
It won't give them the radical and simplified form. It will approximate it as a decimal. So that's
Okay.
one thing.
So
Now,
when do we use the real root options? I saw that there were 2 options. When do we use that one? Or do we always use the complex number one?
Just always use complex because it covers both real and imaginary.
Okay.
Now, here's some other things you could do with the calculator. You can convert fractions to decimals, decimals to fractions, find the prime factorization of a number, the least common multiple, and the greatest common divisor. This would be of numbers. If you put a variable in there, it'll say it's undefined.
So factorization is 2 and then 3?
Mm-hmm.
Menu 2, 3?
Yes.
Okay.
And then here's some examples of that right here. We change 1/4 to a decimal. 0.25 is a fraction. Factor 72, it has a prime factorization of 72. LCM of 6 and 10. And then GCF of 8 and 10. So alongside these kinds of problems, they may want to review law of exponents to be able to factor out the greatest common factor of variables. So with logs, a lot of calculators only have base E and base 10, but in the TI Nspire, you could put any base you want. So you just press Control and then that 10 to the X power, and then you could put the log with any base you want. So like log 3 of 3, and then it will evaluate it. You could store stuff into the calculator for various letters. So to do this, all you need to do is put like a number in, press Control and then var, so you get the arrow, and then assign it a letter. Let's just say that this one's J, and then press Enter. So that means whenever you type J into the calculator, it will say that 7. So let's just say we had J plus 10. That'd be 17. Now, you could store stuff other than just a single number. You could also store a list of numbers. So let's just take this from before. Control, store, and then let's call that T again, or J again. So let's just say we had J plus 10 this time. So it gives you the list of each thing and you add 10 to it. This also works with storing matrices. So in the calculator, you could define a function. So you could name it f of x and then put an equal sign with a colon in front of it and then the function. So like for example, we have f of x and then colon equals 2x squared plus 5. Press enter. It should say done. If it has an error, check your syntax and retry it. So once you've defined a function, you could type in a number in for x. So like f of 3, press enter, it'd be 23. So that just means that whenever you plug in, you'll plug in 3 for every x in this function you defined. Now, if you try to do something like this, like f of a variable plus 3, it'll say error. It'll only be able to evaluate these with numbers and not variables, within variables. Here's another one where we defined midpoint, like the slope formula, and then we could type this in as the 2 points. Now, with matrices, to create a matrix, we'll go to Menu, 7, Matrix and Vector, and then 1, Create, and then Matrix. Define how many rows and how many columns it has. And then we'll just plug in some numbers wherever it gives you. And then you could store this as another variable, so you won't have to rewrite it every time. Let's just call it A. So wherever you type in A now, it's going to represent this matrix. Let's make another one. And let's call that one B. So we'll press Control-var, and then let's just call it B, Enter. And then from there, you could do different operations. So let's just say A times B. A times B. Wait. Oh yeah, and this one would be an error because it doesn't have the right dimensions. Now, we can also find different things like the reduced row echelon form of A. You could type them out like that, or you could also go to Menu, 7, Matrix and Vector, and then reduced row echelon form. That'll also put that there. And of course, you don't have to define it as A and B. You could also just type out the matrix again. You can find determinants. Well, that's not a square matrix, but if it was a square matrix, you'd be able to find determinant. Questions on matrices? All right, so for simplifying expressions, you can't do that directly with just the TI Nspire documents that they give you. There are some expansions you could download onto the calculators and add to the My Library folders. Even if you download something, though, you will have to open it specifically to use those functions. While I was looking through that, I found this website right here that has a bunch of those, and I tried them out. But again, that's just extra stuff for simplifying expressions. This page has that, like the different things that they had added to this document that they have on there. But just normally, you won't be able to simplify expressions. Just like on this previous slide with storing, or not storing. This one right here, defining functions, this will have an error. But after downloading certain things, you might be able to not have an error. It just depends on what is programmed in there. Okay, now for graph tools, that's this icon. You could graph an equation, find the characteristics. For example, let's just graph a quadratic. So f of x equals x minus 1 squared plus 2. Okay, so from there, what we could do is find different characteristics. So, actually, I'll find some with real zeros. Let's do minus 2. Okay, so to find the zeros, you go Menu, 6, Analyze Graph, 1, 0. We have this bar. Make sure that you hover to the left side and then the right side, and then it will give you the approximation. You could do that again to find the other 0. You can also start with the right and then go left for this specific calculator, unlike the TI-84s. Now you have those. If it gives you a number that's like an integer or a number that's easily turned into a fraction, you could turn these into factors. Let's come up with one of those. So like this one, for example. So this would be x, and then x minus 2. That would be the factored form of these zeros. So they could easily find the factors after they find the zeros, as long as it's either an integer or it's a decimal that's easily turned into a fraction, such as 1/2 or something. Now, if we did have a number that was like 1/2, let's just say the zeros was 1.5 and 0. So this would be x for this one, and then x minus 3/2. Can't simplify it anymore, so you just slide this denominator to the front. So it'd be 2x minus 3. So that would be the factor that they might ask for. We could also find the y-intercept. Go menu, 5 trace, 1 graph trace. And then you can use the arrows to move along the curve. When you do that, you can find something that says it labels it 0, it labels the minimum, it labels the y-intercepts. Let's change this back to something else. And it also labels y-intercept. So you could use that to find those intercepts. We could also find the extrema by going to menu, 6 analyze graph, and then either minimum or maximum. That gets you the vertex. You can also find axis of symmetry. So to do that, you go menu, 6 analyze graph, 8 analyze conics, and then 4 axis of symmetry. And then just click on the graph and then it gives it to you, x equals 1. So there's more characteristics, like sometimes they give you a circle equation. So let's delete all of this. Okay, so you have a circle equation. And most of the calculators will still let you put relations in, so you could do that. If do menu, analyze graph, analyze conics, and then you can find the center. It gives you the center. You can find the radius. And then also, if you had another conic, such as another parabola, you could also find directrices and foci and all that. Questions on those? All right, again, with relations, this is just graph entry edit and then to relation. And then for intersection, if you have a system of quadratics or you have inequalities, you'll want to do the intersection on the graph. Now, if it's just linear equations, I would suggest using linsolve instead. And then for the inequality symbols, to get those, you just press Control equals, and then this box will pop up. If you want to make the dashed lines or the solid lines thicker, you can I think it was control and then click. On the computer, it's just a right click. And then you just go attributes and then change it here. Okay, there's different viewing options. You can zoom in, zoom out, reset the window back to the regular standard. And then if you press menu, window, zoom, and then window settings, you could customize what your window is specifically. You could change the max and min parameters, and then also the scaling, like how big each increment is. It usually has it as auto first. You could change it to 1, 0.5, whatever you want to name it to. We can also view the grid by going to menu, to view, 6 grid, and then if you want a line grid, you could press 3. For tables, you could press Control T to get that table. And then to get out of the table, you just press Control T again. You won't have it as a function to get that table. And if you want to have specific numbers here, like if integers aren't what you're looking for, if you're looking for something more specific like a decimal, you go menu, table, table settings, and then instead of independence auto, you could put ask. That way you could type in a number and press enter, and they will give you the output. Now with Vernier Data Quest, here are the steps to put in to find a regression. So the first thing you want to do is click this table right here and put your values. And then after that, you want to click this graph at the bottom in the middle, graph view. And then if you want like a linear regression, press menu, 4 analyze, 6 curve fit, 1 linear. And they'll give you the M, the B, and the correlation coefficient. You just use those to plug into this formula to get your equation. You could do the same thing to find other regressions. Find quadratics, and we can find exponentials. And then it also graphs those curves and lines of best fit right here. Now, if you try to do the regression while you're still on this page, it'll be whited out. Now, I'm not sure why that is, but that's why they need to click on this graph icon first before doing the regression. And then just to clear everything out, you can press Control W no, that resets it so you can put a new set of data in. Now, if you were to send this data to like a spreadsheet, you just press menu, 7 send to, and then you could send it to the list of spreadsheets or these other 2 options. Now with spreadsheets, we could sort numbers. So let's just say that we wanted to sort some fractions. Like it said, list these fractions from least to greatest or something. Okay, there's the list right there. So here's the mean, here's the sum of the three terms here, and then other stuff like standard deviation and median, all that. So also you could do regressions on the spreadsheet. The Vernier data quest would take a couple less steps though. After the lists are input, you can also use it in the calculator function by selecting that list in the menu. And then for geometry tools, while I was looking at it, I checked off all these boxes right here by going to the settings and menu. Okay, so for slope, you could graph the line in graphing, just like normal. To find the slope, you press 8 geometry, 3 measurement, 3 slope. You just click on the line and they'll give you the slope. If you want to get the perpendicular slope and you can't remember flip the fraction, change the sign, you create 2 points on the line that you drew on the graph. Geometry, points in line, then point, and then draw a line segment going through the two. To get the perpendicular line, you press 8 geometry, 4 construction, and then 1 perpendicular. And then you can find the slope of that other line. So like this example, the slope was 5, and the perpendicular slope was -0.2. For circles, here was an SAT question, and then here is what I was able to draw in the circle draw tool. Now, it was a bit difficult to get the exact degrees for this, so if anyone knows an easier way to do that, let me know. Same thing with triangles and quadrilaterals. It seems like it's theoretically possible to find missing lengths and ratios and solving proportions, but getting the exact angles and lengths, I couldn't find a way to easily do that on here. Let me know if there's an easy way to do that. So is there any calculator tricks that you know that I missed? If so, type it and put it here. And then also fill out the survey at the end. How do you feel? How do you feel about showing others how to use the TI Nspire? And how could this presentation be better? Any other questions?
Thank you, Ms. Ramirez.